endorsed by the network, its affiliated stations and broadcasts, management, or advertisers of the network. The show is found under LJA Broadcasting Network. UFO Talk Radio can, but does not necessarily promote any particular lifestyle, belief, religion, political affiliation, or other personal practice. These shows are for entertainment purposes only, and they are not intended to treat or diagnose and or claim to cure any disease or condition, or give any medical or legal advice. All music is purchased and owned by LJA Broadcasting.
I got the windows rolled down, got the radio up, and I'm heading out of Vegas tonight. And it's a 1:30 on a 4-day run, and the desert is a welcome sight. I can see you there in that dress you wear, and it's keeping my foot on the gas. I drink a gallon of Joe just to make it back home and hold you in my arms at last.
You're listening to Glenn Leary on UFO Talk Radio from the LGA Broadcasting Networks.
And hello, everybody, and welcome. May I say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, where you may be from and time zone. We are live. That's right. I have a great show tonight for you, and it's going to be a blast. Preston Dennett will be on the line, and he's holding back. He's waiting, and I'm waiting for him too. To all my friends and broadcasters out there, small broadcasters, we do thank you. Ham Operator 73's to you, and to the Silent Key, Whiskey 60, Baker. And as you heard Chris here's song that he opens our show with, to the broadcasters up there, we thank you again. KBHR 57 AM, Sicily, Alaska, I thank you. And to everyone listening all over the world, this is Glenn Leary. Oh yeah, I love that song. I do thank you for tuning in tonight. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcast, iHeart, Archer, Twitter, Spotify, Speakler, Reverb Nation. We also have StreamYard, Facebook, YouTube, The Larry Glenn Anderson Show, Glenn Larry, UFO Talk Radio, Area 51, Talk Radio, S.com, of course, and OlympiaRadio.com, KGhostRadio.com, AM and FM side, by the way, and SoundCloud. And there's some other ones out there. We have some small broadcasters that pick our show up. And as you know, the show's for a lot of fun. I've always enjoyed it. We've had so many great guests on this year. And we're starting this out, I think, just about right, to tell you the truth. And this gentleman that I have on the line, which we'll have on soon, Mr. Preston Dennett. Well, he knows a lot about UFOs. He's got many, many books out. Knows about the phenomena about ghosts also. Apparently back in 1986, he discovered that his family and friends and co-workers, have had experiences and encounters by UFOs or aliens. Well, he's got several books out that explains all that. But we have him on the line now. He is a field investigator, and he's a pro. And he's one of the best, I'll tell you. He's been written up in many, many magazines. He's been on many, many talk shows, TV shows. He was just on the news tonight. And we're going to talk about all that. And I'll tell you, I want you to sit back and listen because you're going to enjoy this. We'll be back after this.
Violence, theft, drugs, graffiti. It's all part of joining a gang. In times like these, we need to protect our children and our community from gangs. Gangs often prey on unsupervised teens with low self-esteem, who perform poorly in school, who seek a sense of belonging, or are simply bored. Joining a gang often involves violent hazing rituals. Once in a gang, members can become alienated from their families, school, and friends. Drugs, guns, and malicious activity are common elements in gangs. Trying to leave a gang can be a difficult and dangerous process. The best way to get out of a gang is never to join one. Protect kids from being recruited by a gang. Know who they're hanging out with. Involve kids in after-school activities and provide positive role models. Help reduce gang activities in your community by working with local law enforcement and school systems. Don't let a kid you know get involved with gangs. Visit ncpc.org to learn more or contact your local law enforcement agency.
A message from the U.S. Department of Justice, National Crime Prevention Council, and the Ad Council.
And we are back with Preston Dennett. And Preston, are you on the line? You there?
I'm here.
Ah, fantastic. Oh, gosh. I'm just so happy to get you tonight, to tell the truth. My gosh, so much happening, and with the UFOs and these other things that are, well, we're flying around, UFOs. What else do you call them? You know?
Well, they're calling them UAPs these days.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan, really. I think I call them ET craft. I think that's what they are.
Yeah, that's good. Well, you are an author of many, many books, and let's talk about a couple of those. Of course, the UFO sightings. Every book that you've written has a story about each book has its own storyline, correct? Where there's incidents and people you have interviewed. Then you have some that are from old articles, and then from other folks that have written books, authors, and what have you. But you interview these people yourself. You go out to the field, and you get their stories, and you put it in a book. And enlighten us more about that, would you please? As a UFO investigator.
That's exactly right. I enjoy armchair research as much as anyone else, but I really like firsthand original material, stuff people haven't heard before. And I've really dug deep. I think one of the things I really like to do is find patterns in UFO cases. For example, one of my books is Schoolyard Ufo Encounter.
Just saw that, yeah.
There's a very famous case which took place in 1994 in Rua, Zimbabwe, the Ariel Elementary School. There's now a documentary coming out about that one case. But when I heard that, I thought, I think there's another famous case of a schoolyard UFO encounter in Australia.
Right.
And Westall High School, 1966. Some 200, 300 kids and teachers saw multiple objects, at least one of which landed next to the school. I thought, wait a second, Crestview Elementary School in Opelika, Florida, same thing happened. And I started finding others. I mean, there was, of course, the very famous Hillsdale College incident in Michigan, 1966, which was literally like 3 weeks before the case in Australia. But the deeper I dug, the more I found. I mean, there was Broadhaven Elementary School in Wales, and it just went on. And after I dug deep, I found over 100 cases, reaching back to 1950, all the way up to the present day, all over the world. I mean, Russia, Australia, New Zealand, Africa, all across Europe,
and these
Canada, U.S.
At schools only? I mean, the school grounds, do they appear over the schools in those different areas?
Yeah, these are not your average sighting, which is basically a anomalous light at night. And it zips by, seen for a few moments, and off it goes. These are very low-level sightings. They're typically daylight sightings, which is significant because those are much rarer. And very low-level, long-lasting. And I was shocked to find out that in 1/3 of these cases, these objects actually land and or humanoids were seen. So this is clearly a case of where they are targeting schools, if you will. Not in a negative way, I don't think. But basically, they show themselves off.
Right. We're real. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Shows themselves off. We're here. And this is a real thing happening. Gosh. And there was another book you wrote. Some books here. 28, 30 books. You just had by the way, a UFO book. It's now #1 on Amazon, right?
That's right. Yeah. Several of my recent books have done very well. And this latest one hit #1 in the UFO category. It's called Symmetry, a true UFO adventure.
Wow.
And this is a little different from some of my other books, which are sort of collections of UFO accounts, first-hand cases, usually. But this one involves conscious contactee. She's never gone under hypnosis. She remembers her encounters without hypnosis. Ever since age 14, she's been taken on board regularly.
Really?
She's been able to photograph these things. Actually met her face to face, and sure enough, UFOs showed up. I saw them myself. She's got corroborating witnesses. Really an extraordinary case.
Now, when this UFO showed up, she has pictures of the craft itself? Or inside the craft, too?
Yeah, photographs, moving films. Many of them are at night, but there is one short clip, which is a daylight segment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, corroborating witnesses.
God's great.
I've talked to a lot of people, and it's pretty rare that people are able to provide a whole lot of evidence.
Right.
Some will have, scoop marks on their body.
Mm-hmm.
Many can provide corroborating witnesses, but photographs and films are quite rare.
So they have been tested or examined, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult to determine what exactly. I'm not sure that they're going to convince a diehard skeptic, because these days photos are much easier to fake.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they appear to be authentic. I've interviewed her. I've interviewed the people who she was with when they were being filmed.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing it yourself is, of course, I mean, there's nothing like that.
No.
So.
Do you, this gentleman named Terry, which had an implant, if you're familiar with that gentleman, and
Lovelace, perhaps?
Yes, it would be him. And we got talking, and I have spoken with other people that have had implants removed. Pretty far out, man. I mean, and here's one for you. I had a open heart surgery. I had a heart attack, actually, and they tested me and put me through a bunch of tests and stuff. And they were checking your brain out, what have you. And they said there's something in your brain that is an object that shouldn't be there. I'm going, what? And I said, well, maybe I got in a motorcycle accident with a kid or something like that. He said, no, I don't think that would have happened that way. I go, well, would you explain it to Doc? No, nothing was said with the doctor. He couldn't, So that was quite interesting when we got into the implants. I thought back about that. And I'm now trying to get all the records and everything else, those x-rays and stuff. So I have that. But I don't know. Is it maybe something that we're born with? Where do these things come from? Are we taken? Does it they implant us and we don't remember stuff? I mean, how would you explain that?
Yeah, well, this is certainly something I hear about quite often. People I interview say they go to the doctor, and the doctor's like, well, what's this in your foot? Have you had surgery? You appear to have a metal object. Or, in your arm, your leg. Not too long ago, I interviewed a lady who took her 14-year-old son to the dentist. She lives in Indiana. And the dentist was shocked because there was a metallic sphere under his back molar. No entry wound. It was asymptomatic. And he asked her, what's this? Showed her the x-rays, which she did send to me. I sent them to medical professionals. Everyone diagnosed it as a foreign body, metallic. And they had no explanation until they started having encounters. I do believe he's a contactee. She said, have you ever seen a UFO? And he denied it at first. Didn't want to scare her. But I asked her to ask him again. He wouldn't let me interview him myself. He was very shy. He's just a teenager. So I interviewed him through his mother. And he admitted that, yes, just prior to this apparent implant appearing under his tooth, he did have a very close-up sighting. And so this is not uncommon. Some of these have been removed by Dr. Roger Lear and others, the late Dr. Roger Lear.
Mm-hmm. Out of Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
Yeah.
smoking gun evidence. Some of them are very unusual. I have asked contactees if they have any information about these, and a handful of them have talked to the ETs, or were told what the purpose of these implants is, which is not tracking, as is often speculated, but what they were told, and I think I have 4 cases, and I know of a few other in the literature, it is to monitor health, to boost immune system, to measure the levels of pollution in a person's body, and generally speaking, health-related, monitoring vital signs. So this is what the ETs are telling the witnesses. So take that for what you will, but that is something that is consistently reported.
Oh, wow. I have thought about that. I mean, here I had open heart surgery, but could they fix me, put me back to normal? I don't know.
Right?
Yeah, shoot. I mean, I'm open for it. I mean,
Well, it's funny you say that, because very early on in my research, I did get a lady who was having regular contact and had been diagnosed with a tumor, a cyst, rather, in her fallopian tubes. And this was verified by MRI. It's causing her a lot of pain, a lot of problems. And the night before surgery, she had a visitation and went to the doctor. And they said, well, we cannot find, they did the pre-op imaging. And they said, your cyst is gone. You've had surgery, haven't you? Which she denied, because she hadn't, but she kind of knew what was happening at this point, because she had that visitation that night. And they said, well, we know you've had surgery because there's fluid here that's present in your fallopian tube, which is only present after surgery. And they examined her, and they're like, these appear to be laser marks on your abdomen. Where did these come from? And she was not able to answer them. And that was my first case of that kind. But I started running into others, and digging deeper, I found out, Glenn, that pretty much every major researcher out there has these kinds of cases, but weren't really talking about them. Bud Hopkins, I cornered him face to face because he never wrote about it. He said, yes, I do have cases. And David Jacobs, of course, has written about it. John Mack, Barbara Lamb, Edith Fiore, the first person with a PhD to write about people who are having direct encounters, said that fully half of the people she worked with have had healings. So I ended up writing a book on this. I've documented some 300 cases. Yeah, they reach back actually over 100 years now, all over the world. It's definitely a consistent feature of UFO encounters, particularly on board, though not always. People can be. There's a very famous case in Texas, Damon, Texas, where 2 police officers were struck by a beam of light from a UFO, and one of them had a wound on his finger from a baby pet alligator where he had been bitten, and it was swollen, painful, bandaged up. And as soon as this beam of light hit him, he said he could feel it. It was warm, it was tingling, but the pain went away. And afterwards, moments later, they fled the scene, pulled over. His finger wasn't hurting. He pulled off the bandage. There was no sign of this wound whatsoever. And this is a well-documented case. I mean, these are police officers.
Yeah.
They were interviewed by Major Leach from the nearby Air Force Base.
Right.
One of the officers was a supervisor with 60 officers beneath him. It's a very well-verified case.
Well, there you go. I mean, this is happening more and more and more now, is it not?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There was, long ago, I think it was J. Allen Hynek, who, as you may know, is father of modern ufology, Project Blue Book astronomical consultant. He's quoted as saying 1 in 40 people have had an onboard UFO encounter. I read that early on in my research, and I thought, no way. That would mean I know someone who's had this experience. So I think we all know, 40 people within our, circle of family, friends, and coworkers, and so forth. And I have to tell you, I did not have to ask 40 people, and I found about 5 people who had this experience, and I surveyed the literature. I wrote an article for the Mutual UFO Network, the MUFON Journal, and it was 1 year later that the Roper organization, who does polling, tackled the UFO subject and asked some thousands of people various questions, and there were abductee.
Hmm.
They found 1 in 50. So I think it's a lot more common than perhaps even UFO researchers realize.
Well, now, when you were younger, you started all this in 1986, correct?
That's right.
And were your coworkers talking about you about this stuff automatically, or would just come to the conversation, or how did it actually come about with these people?
God, no. No. Nobody was talking about it.
No.
That's why it came as an incredible shock. I will say my brother did run into the house when I was, I must have been about 14.
Mm-hmm.
Said he saw a UFO, but I just looked at him like he was crazy. We all did.
Right.
And I was skeptic. I was very skeptical of UFOs. But on November 17, I'll never forget it, 1986, I heard a report on the news about a sighting over Alaska by a Japanese airline pilot. It's a very famous case, very well verified with radar and multiple witnesses.
Right.
And it was just enough to sort of pierce my armor of skepticism. I asked my brother Mark to explain again what he saw, and he had a very compelling story. And that's what broke the ice for me. I started asking other family members, and some of them looked at me like I was crazy, but I was shocked, scandalized even, to find out that I knew a lot of people were having really dramatic encounters.
Right.
Missing time, face-to-face encounters with what we call grays, the whole deal.
Yeah.
I was somewhat angry. I was not a happy camper. I'm like, how could you not tell me this? Why did you keep this secret?
Oh yeah, afraid, scared. My friends all think I'm crazy. That was my sister. 67. We saw one outside our bedroom window, which faced the street. I have 2 windows, and I woke up to some type of a sound, and I looked out there, and there was this craft in the sky, and it was hovering. And I yelled at her, "Look out the window!" She says, "Oh, what's that?" And then we talked about it in the morning. She says, "Well, I didn't really see anything." She acted really scared, but she wouldn't say anything. Now we're up in her 60s. Now she's finally talking. And I'm telling everybody what I saw. Well, your little brother's crazy, So that's the way it was back then. But there were a lot being seen back then those times also. There was like a time period that they were being seen, then all of a sudden there wasn't many reports, and then it came back again. They started showing up again. But
they do seem to come in waves.
Yeah. Interesting, huh? Now, about this new news that we're supposed to have, which happened yesterday, I believe. The new report. Are we getting much out of this whole thing, or is it just the same old stuff?
Well, I'm kind of 2 minds about it.
Okay.
It is a step forward. I will say that.
All right.
Encouraging to see this subject being taken seriously without debunking, without nervous giggling,
right?
Without just outright skepticism. Yeah, congressional hearing is a big deal.
Boy, is it.
This day, May 17th, will go down in history, I think, because for the first time, our own government said flat out, UAPs, as they call them, UFOs, call them what you will, are real. And they even use the word extraterrestrial.
Wow.
They're not quite going that far as saying they are extraterrestrial, but for them to actually use the word
is
huge. We're having a movement, really, for the first time in decades. So it's a big deal, but it's clear they're not being forthcoming. There was a really telling moment during these congressional hearings when one of the representatives asked about the Malmstrom Incident. Now, if you haven't heard of that, it's an incident that took place in 1967
Go ahead.
in Montana at Malmstrom Air Force Base, where UFOs showed up. I'll call them alien craft. That's my assessment of what we're dealing with here. UFOs showed up and actually shut down our intercontinental ballistic missiles, nuclear tipped, rendered them inoperable for a short period of time. This is a huge incident which clearly had to be an effect on national security. This is what the representative asked Scott Bray about, the Deputy Director of Naval Intelligence and Ronald Moultrie, the Undersecretary of Defense. And they both said, no, we have not gotten any information on this. We have no reporting on it. And that I found just absurd, laughable, disingenuous.
Right.
If anything is going to affect our national security.
Right.
It's a missile base being shut down by an unidentified craft.
Huh. Well, and now here we are today, and they're being seen everywhere, like they're coming out of the woodwork. We're here. I mean, what's next? You think their agenda is?
Well, I hate this field, but kind of can't help it. I really like to stick to the facts, but it's clear that they're putting forth an alien threat agenda. They're saying that these objects represent a danger to our pilots who are seeing them daily.
Right.
And they asked him, well, have you ever tried to engage them in communication? The answer was a flat no. Like, really? And they said, have any craft ever collided with them? And they said, no. There's been 11 near misses. They're not willing to say that this is extraterrestrial, and yet they are going as far as saying this does seem to represent
I'm going to open the lines
technology, metallic craft. So they're not talking about, studying Barney Hill or anyone who claims to have had contact at all.
I'm going to go ahead.
Sidestepped Roswell.
I'm going to go ahead.
Oh, sure.
And I'm going to open these lines, man, because it's starting to light up. So here we go.
To talk with Glenn Larry, deep in the desert of Nevada, lines are open at 1-702-874-1114. That's 702-874-1114. For now, here again, Glenn Larry. Pahrump lines are open at 775-990-8275. That's 775-990-8275.
Preston, looks like we do have a caller. Caller, what is your name and where are you from? Caller, you on the line? We hung up. Oh, that's one down. Yeah, but they're coming in with these reports, and they denied them in the past, but now they're here now, and they can't deny them. It's open now. It's open field. How are you going to cover it up? How would you cover this up right now? You can't, right?
Exactly. The cover-up has been a complete failure.
Go ahead, caller.
Like a sieve. It has been since day one.
Right.
I think that's what's forcing disclosure, honestly, is they are trying to, they have to be forthcoming to some extent, or they will lose all credibility. Our government, I'm talking about, is trying to control the narrative, they have to talk about this because they cannot hide it anymore.
Right. I have a caller on the line on 114. Go ahead. Can you hear me, caller? We have them on the line, but they're not talking. Interesting. Caller? I don't know what's going on here. Well, they dropped off. Unbelievable. So credibility is what it's all about. And if you don't have the credibility, it's too bad, is it not? Caller? Yeah. Let's see. How many do you think that they have come up with information at this point in time that has the meeting they came up with some numbers, did they not? 400 and something, was it, military personnel have seen the
originally it was a list of about 144. One which they explained the best they couldn't, and now it's up to 400 or so. And mind you, these are just sightings, and they're looking at sightings to try to get real data from, which I find a little bit laughable because we have much better evidence. We have over 1,000 landing trace cases. have many, many hundreds of people who claim to have had direct contact and been taken inside these things. Now, you can get a lot more data from a case like that than from a distant sighting.
Correct.
And for that matter, they're ignoring the Phoenix Lights incident or the Hudson Valley waves in the late 1980s, the Gulf Breeze wave. These are cases which have an enormous amount of eyewitnesses and evidence. The Stevensville, Texas case, much more recent, had radar returns that matched exactly what the witnesses were seeing. Many of the witnesses were police officers and trained observers. So I find it fascinating that they're concentrating on rather distant, well, not always distant, I will give them that. And they did show some footage, which was interesting, but I have to be honest, I've seen much better footage. And I know for a fact that they themselves have better footage because we have whistleblowers who have said so, who are in planes that they had gun camera footage that was excellent, and this has not been released.
Right.
So they are still covering it up. They're not being forthcoming, transparent, or truthful. Not completely, at least.
And a lot's been being seen over ships out there in the ocean or navies. Are seeing a lot more of these. So I'm getting, especially when they're doing the maneuvers.
Yeah,
And
that's right. Especially off the Southern California coast.
yeah.
That's what really broke the story wide open. The whole tic-tac incident.
Caller, you're on the line. Can you hear me, caller?
I can.
All right. You're on the line. I don't know why you did not talk up when I asked you who you are.
I didn't hear you right away, Glenn.
Okay. You are on the line with quite an interesting person.
Is it Mr. Preston? Is that what I understand?
Well, last name is Dennett. Preston Dennett.
Dennis. Glenn, this is a great show tonight. This is Dwayne calling from Las Vegas.
Well, Dwayne, welcome to the show.
Yeah, I had a question to Mr. Dent about the congressional hearings we had today. To me, it's real fascinating that they're doing this. But my question is why? Why would they do this? I mean, now, what's the purpose of this? And obviously, they keep saying national security. They're worried they have a military edge to it, or a military kind of a side that they're trying to talk about. But to me, it's just bizarre that, I don't understand why they would want to do this now at this time.
Yeah, that is very curious. Thanks, Dwayne. It's hard to say. I think part of it is because they are trying to control the narrative, control what we believe, what we know about this subject. It's clear that they've known that this is real for many, many years, and they have not been forthcoming. The cover-up is real. It's demonstrable. It's not speculation. And now here they are just suddenly coming forward. I think part of the reason is because there has been recent leaks of footage from insiders. The Tic Tac footage and other footage was not initially, official and sanctioned, I guess would be the word. But once it came out, I think they were forced to make a statement on this. And as I said earlier, if they don't start talking about this and admitting that it's real, people will stop looking to them for answers. They will lose credibility. I think that's the driving force behind disclosure at this point.
Mm-hmm. Do you think...
Well, the thing that's interesting to me, Ms. Denton, is, this is going to open the doors for everything. Obviously the legitimate UFO research, as you do, and it's also going to open the door for just the crackpots and the ones that there's a lot of misinformation out there, in my opinion. It kind of dilutes it and clouds up all the legitimate research with. There's a lot of people just trying to make fun of it, or just crackpots trying to get their fame. So to me, it's just it opens it up for mockery.
Exactly. Yeah, they're opening up a huge can of worms. I think
They
that's
are.
why we haven't seen movement earlier than this, because people are going to start coming out and saying, "Well, listen, I'm being taken on board. What are you going to do about that?" And
Exactly.
yes, this does. I mean, there are a lot of crackpots out there. There are people trying to make a buck, and there is disinformation, which I find very interesting because there is proof. I mean, honest to God, hard evidence that disinformation agents are coming from our own government. Researcher Stanton Friedman pretty much proved that Donald Menzel, a famed astronomer, was actually a government agent providing disinformation.
Boy.
He's not the only one. There are others. What's his name?
Anyway, well, it's nice to talk to you, and it's nice to hear from legitimate research. And Glenn, great show tonight. I got a bad connection on my end, but I'm going to keep listening.
All right.
And we're all sitting here listening at down at the house here in Vegas.
All right.
Appreciate your show. Have a good night.
Thank you, Connie, sir. Thank you very much. Yeah. So, Con, I don't know. Why don't they just pick up on the senators or someone that really could do something? I mean, they could pop in and take people out of their beds. I mean, if they really want to get this thing rolling, it's one way of doing it. Has there been anybody in that type of level that's ever been picked up or have seen and experienced?
I imagine there has. I mean, people I've talked to, they're coming from all levels of society, and that some celebrities have been involved. They're not coming forward, but then in a few cases where they were involved.
Mm-hmm.
Naval officers I've interviewed, police officers, people within high levels of government, people who worked for government. I don't know how high up it's gone, but we do have President Reagan.
Yeah.
When he was a governor, apparently saw UFOs. Carter, of course, was very well known for his sighting.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Governor Fife Symington finally came forward and said he was actually a witness to the Phoenix Lights.
Right.
Something which he did not say when he was in office. But there are numerous governors and state representatives and senators who have witnessed this activity, and not just in the U.S., but across the world.
Incredible. A lot in Australia, in Belgium also. I mean, they're seeing stuff during the daytime, and up close.
Yeah, it's clear. I think in some cases, UFOs are, generally speaking, evasive.
Yeah,
but
behind
their
clouds.
behavior does a 180 degree, and they put on what we call a display. They show themselves on purpose. I think it was Frank Salisbury, a biologist from Utah, who was the first to sort of remark on this type of behavior, where they're showing themselves off on purpose. He wrote a book about it, the Utah UFO display. They are trying to be noticed. I think, in effect, they're conducting a publicity campaign, announcing their presence.
Right. Like the movie V. You remember that?
I do, yeah.
What about the orb that has been seen over Los Angeles just the other day? Huge orb, bright light. And someone had caught it on camera where it was dropping smaller orbs. What's that all about? Is that drones that they're using as their type of drones? Or, I mean, they do some weird stuff. Then they come back together and it disappears.
Exactly. Yeah, that turns up quite a bit. There's very large, what we would call motherships, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
There's really smaller craft. And some of these would have to be unmanned because they're tiny little things. Very much like I think we have with drones, or perhaps they're probes.
Yeah.
It's very hard to say.
Yeah.
but UFOs can come in all different sizes. Of course, the Phoenix Lights craft, witnesses feel that this is at least a half mile to a mile in diameter, which is huge. And often people will describe these craft as being quite small, 10, 20 feet in diameter at most, or 5 feet thick, maybe 10. So they could be quite tiny, quite large, and orbs as well. That's one of the things that really baffles me about this phenomenon is the different types and shapes and sizes of these craft. I mean, we have different shapes of our vehicles, sure, but cars have variations, but they're pretty recognizable.
Right.
These craft are spherical, they're saucer-shaped, they're V-shaped.
Box.
I would say those are the most common. Egg-shaped.
Yeah.
But really, it goes beyond that. I mean, we have hexagonal, rectangular, you name it, it's reported somewhere.
I had a show that I explained to one of my sightings to, and I'll tell you about it real fast. It is about you, excuse me, but this whole thing was, I owned a security company years ago, and it was late, 3 in the morning. The stars were so big, you almost pick them out of the sky. A clear night, no lights. And I was looking at the sky, and I looked at all those beautiful stars. And I noticed that these certain stars, big cutout in the sky, were moving very, very, very slow, but they were all moving together, where the other stars were staying still around this cutout. And that woke me up. I went and got somebody to look at it also. By just glancing up, you would notice it. But if you just looked at it and watched it for a while, pretty amazing. And it's a mothership. It's got to be. Had a lady on the other night that was telling me about the ships up there in space above the Earth. Thousands of them cloaked. And what do you think about that? What would your opinion be on that?
Yeah, I mean, there are some cases involving what you call, I guess, fleets of UFOs, mass sightings. I've investigated a couple myself, not a lot, 3 or 4. There was a very famous incident in Farmington, New Mexico, which involved several hundred craft, seen by at least half of the members of that town.
Right.
That's definitely a UFO fleet. I think these craft are in large numbers. It's not just a few UFOs people are seeing.
Right.
If you look at the files of MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, and NUFORC, the National UFO Reporting Center, they get 10, 20 reports a day. And if you ask people who have seen these things, did you report your sighting? Almost nobody does. I'll be very generous and say that 1 in 10 is. But I have to tell you, it's more like 1 in 100. So if you have 20 people reporting UFOs daily, you can easily times that by 10 or even 100. So that would be 200, 2,000 sightings daily. This is an ongoing phenomenon, and it's much more numerous than people realize. It's just the ridicule factor has been very effective, and it stops people from reporting it.
Right.
I always ask people, did you report it? Like, well, who would I call? If you call the police, they will not handle UFO reports. They will refer you to the Air Force, or if they are educated, to MUFON. But most people don't even know what MUFON is. So there's a vast underreporting of this phenomenon.
Is there a number that they can get from you if they've seen UFOs and have to report one? Is it on your website?
Yeah. If you just punch my name on the internet, this should take you to my website, and you can contact me through my website if you have an encounter you'd like to report, or a question, or a story you'd like to share. I'm always happy to talk to people.
And there's Preston
People
Dennett.
have no recourse. They don't know who to go to.
No, they don't. And they're afraid to also sometimes, but God, at least report it. Preston's Preston, last spelling of his last name is Dennett. And is that .com? Would go right to your website?
PrestonDennett.weebly.com.
There you
The
go.
actual address.
Okay.
But yeah, it shouldn't be hard to find. I'm also on Facebook,
Yeah.
Twitter, and, Instagram, YouTube.
They can get your books on Amazon.
That's right. Amazon, other online retailers, bookstores as well.
Mm-hmm. And you have a #1 seller now on Amazon. And the name of that book again?
That book is called Symmetry, A True UFO Adventure.
Yeah. And how many books you have out? About 30?
Yeah, well, 29, but number 30 is on its way.
Oh, great.
Got more after that.
Fantastic. And there's a blog also. What blog is that they would go to blog you and have conversations?
My website would be the best way.
Okay.
Or my YouTube channel. Again, just punch in my name, it should take you there.
That's great. I'm going to put out some for more callers and see what we get. We'll be right back. Go.
To talk with Glenn Larry, deep in the desert of Nevada, lines are open at 1-702-874-1114. That's 702-874-1114. Now, here again, Glenn Larry.
Yes, and I am live with Preston Dennett. And I'm telling you, what a fascinating show. Have you seen a UFO? Have you ever reported one? Are you afraid to report that sighting? Maybe you have a friend that was with you. Report them, no matter what. Don't be afraid. We're going to go to a caller line. Hello, caller. You're live on the air. And what's your name and where you're from?
Hey, Glenn. It's Chris.
Hey, Chris. How you doing?
Hey, pretty good. It's a great show today. Great show tonight.
Well, thank you kindly. You hear us okay and everything's going well, I hope.
Yeah, everything sounds good. So, I just recently saw this new footage. They military released footage.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's somewhat new of the water right outside California, off San Diego, of a craft. I don't know what military, probably Navy. So I was wanting to know from Preston, what is it? I mean, for me, I would think that the ETs would. There's so much water on the planet, that would be the place to be. And they're obviously, if they're being sighted over the oceans, that they're amphibious vehicles that can fly in the air and also be submerged in the ocean. And I would think that would be the place to be to hide out or hang out, or even if you wanted to build some kind of base on some of these deep ocean areas. Because I did hear you said that they're showing themselves, but for me personally, I think if they really wanted to show themselves, they could do a little better job. They could go in major metropolitan cities and with social media and everything like that. It would that would give it credibility. The funny thing is you see one video of something, it really doesn't give credibility anymore because everything's deep fake. But now the credibility comes from social media. I mean, if you've got 1 million people posting it on YouTube or TikTok or whatever, that kind of gives us legitimacy. So I guess I'll leave you at that. I just had the question about the amphibious vehicles there. Have a good night.
Thank you, caller. Appreciate it. Well, what do you think, Preston?
Yeah, I'm glad Chris brought that up. UFOs, unidentified submersible objects, which have been getting a lot of attention. I've done a lot of research on this because there's a huge amount of activity in the San Pedro, Santa Catalina channel here off the Southern California coast. It's one of the top 10 producers of reports like this. Mile for mile, I think it might be the top producer.
Mm-hmm.
And these objects do have the ability to go in and out of the water and through the air, something we can't do. And we do have an awful lot of water on this planet. It's a great place for them to hide, for them to be there in probably large numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So they do have a couple of cases where they're coming out of the water, and it's not just 10 or 20 or even 50, it's over 100. So there's a very good possibility that there could be bases down there. But absolutely, UFOs are a thing. They're not only in our oceans, lakes, rivers, you name it. This did come up in the congressional hearings today. It was very interesting when it did, because they were asked about the USO activity off the Southern California coast here in particular, where there is some really good photographic evidence and a lot of eyewitness reports. And they basically sidestepped the question and said that is a matter for the confidential portion of these hearings. What we heard today was the public hearing. There's a whole another whole section there that is not being made public, which is completely confidential.
Right.
The subject of USOs came up. We don't get to hear what they know about that. That is for their ears only.
What's going to happen when one lands right in the middle of LA or something like that? I mean, how are they going to handle that one?
Right?
Yeah, it could happen. I mean, they're getting
If
pretty
the Phoenix
bold.
Lights happened today.
Getting pretty bold.
Yeah, it could happen. And I like what Chris said. The ETs could really show themselves off if they wanted to, and they're not. I mean, they could change the world overnight. Disclosure wouldn't be a thing. There would be no cover-up if they just landed, like you say, in LA and didn't leave or even hovered. And they're not doing that. Not yet. I think they know better. We're not quite ready. They did, in 1954, hover over the White House. And what did we do? We did not react well. We scrambled planes after them. We were trying to shoot these things down.
Yeah.
That's another thing that came up in the congressional hearings. They were asked, have you ever shot at these objects? And they flat out, Scott Bray and Ronald Moultrie, said no.
No, I don't believe that.
And that's not true. That's
no.
demonstrably not true.
Right.
There's a very well-known incident in 1942, the Battle of L.A., where objects hovered over Culver City for over an hour, over 2 hours, and we shot 1,400 rounds of ammunition at them. This is verified through documents from the Freedom of Information Act, not to mention thousands of witnesses, and I've talked to a couple of them myself. So that was a flat-out lie.
And they lied in Congress, my gosh.
Bald-faced lie from the Deputy Director of Naval Intelligence and the Undersecretary of Defense. This is why I don't trust them.
No.
They are lying, and we can prove it.
Yeah. No, I do not trust them either. We're too far into this, and they're backpedaling a little bit when they said that, I think. But yeah. Well, there's more to come out. I mean, truth will be said and be seen. Folks, like you say, are not going to put up with these lies. And if we don't get the answers from them, I understand that we'll get the answers from somebody else. And I don't know what that's the direction that was going. It was said by somebody that's in the media quite a bit. Yeah. So now I'm going to ask you a question. Do you think that any other with the UFO sightings and communication does that tie into anything else on Earth? Some say Bigfoot's involved, and when there's a Bigfoot sighting, there's a UFO sighting, and is there any ties between that and other phenomena like ghosts, whatever, or is it just by itself? I mean, you've heard what people have said and written.
Oh yeah, and there is a tie-in there.
There is,
and that's why very early on, I'm like, wow, I guess I'm gonna have to look into ghosts and near-death experiences, because if you talk to people who are having these experiences, immediately they will say, well, they communicated by telepathy. They levitated me up into the ship. And they come back and they're having, out-of-body experiences, precognition. There are a number of cases, a handful, compared to the huge number of reports, which is well over 100,000, in which Bigfoot and UFO phenomena intersect perfectly. The vast majority don't, but there are some that intersect, to the T, where people are seeing Bigfoot at the same time of a UFO landing. Sometimes even seeing these things come in or out of the craft. So there does appear to be a connection. It's very hard to understand what's going on here.
Yes, really.
A lot of contactees, in particular, report a very wide variety of paranormal events. Mediumship, channeling, seeing shadow people, poltergeist-like activity. I'm not quite sure exactly what's going on here. A lot of researchers have refused to examine, the paranormal or spiritual aspects of it. I think that's a mistake. We're not going to solve any mysteries by ignoring evidence.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I really started digging into becoming a paranormal investigator as well. Because there absolutely is a connection.
Right. Interesting. Well, I've heard about it, but I wasn't sure if there was or not. But, gosh. Well, and again, I sure want to thank you for coming on the show. And they can get a hold of your books through Amazon by looking your name up. And do you have some videos also for sale or not?
No, not at this point.
Okay.
I do have a lot of videos on my YouTube channel.
Okay, yeah.
They are free.
Okay.
But yeah, I take this phenomenon very seriously. It's something I've been studying for 35 years now. People may be skeptical. I understand that. I was. But I think if you do your research, you will see that this is absolutely real. I think the day is coming, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
when the cover-up will completely collapse one way or another. And I think we're moving towards open official contact. So at some point, and it looks like it's going to be our generation.
Boy,
Sooner rather than later.
I can't wait.
It's going to be a very different world.
Stephen Greer has a thing going. C2, is it? Something like that?
CE5.
C5. Sorry. And I guess it's quite interesting how that works. They will almost just summon them to come and appear. It's a higher level, I guess, of communication. And there's many groups all over the world doing the same thing. Have you experimented with that at all?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. This is a movement that has been going on for decades. Stephen Greer popularized it in the early 1990s. He came here to LA, and I did attend his meeting, his presentation, and we formed a charter group here in LA,
Great.
which I was a member for at least 5 years. We would go out, a very small group of us, 10 core members, but 20 of us sometimes. And we did have a lot of success calling down mostly anomalous lights. They clearly weren't, weather balloons or helicopters or satellites or what have you. These are called CE5s.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, J. Allen Hynek was the first to categorize encounters as, close encounter of the first kind, a simple sighting.
Mm-hmm.
Second kind, it affects the environment.
Third
kind is face-to-face contact. And CE5 is a human-initiated contact. And yes, that is being done all over the world. This is, I think, one of the cutting edges of UFO research. That and disclosure
Mm-hmm.
and investigating face-to-face contact. These are the three fronts, I think, that we will have the most change, the most pay dirt, the most movement. It should be very interesting to see how this all rolls out, because it's not going to go away. That's clear.
I'll get that too. Tell you for sure. Well, my friend, thank you so very much. And I hope to have you on again. And I do thank you for taking the time to be on the show. You're a fantastic, interesting guest, and you sure are the real deal. And I beg and talk you folks out there, get his books. Learn about UFOs. Don't be afraid to report them. And, well, Preston, again, thank you so very much, and we'll talk soon.
Hey, thanks, Glenn. It was a pleasure and an honor. I appreciate it.
Well, we thank you. We do appreciate you. Thank you kindly. We'll be back next Tuesday, everybody. I am Glenn Larry, and we thank you for listening. Oh, yeah, we do.